Welcome to Books Boys, live from the Grand Library, TheDean and
Playboy Alex. Guys, keep calm and read your tickets.
We're using the Anna Karenina method here.
He's Alex.
Hello there.
I'm TheDean, and we are the Books Boys.
The one and only.
This is the Books Boys show. Get it?
Buy it.
Books. Woo! Nailed the intro in 2 takes.
Yes. You sent it to me and I'm like, okay, is this a recorded thing?
We've also got little Alfred with us. There he is, up to his usual tricks. And it's time for Books Boys. So this is the first episode without PJ. But Alex, you've been promoted from Playboy to full Books Boy. So
Yeah. I mean,
executive director of books. Carry it in your stride.
how many did PJ usually read?
And 1.
Okay. So I have met the bare minimum. I am qualified.
Yes, you've met the target, so that's great.
Okay, good.
I mean, normally what I would do is I would cover some of my books and then PJ would do his in the middle, and we can still do that, but I'm excited just to hear, like, why don't you tell us what your book was, because it ties into some stuff we did recently.
Yeah, so the book I read was Hadrian's Empire. And yeah, the reason I was so interested in reading this book was because, well, we just went to Greece and there were lots of things named after Hadrian. And we're like, who in the world is that?
I'd heard of him from just, general Roman studies, but I didn't realize he was so historically important, I guess. And it kind of turns out he's responsible for like a lot of the stuff that survived.
Yeah, we'll get into that, I think, a little bit later. But yeah,
cool.
Very interesting guy. And I'm looking forward to talking about him.
Awesome. I'm gonna give this only 30 seconds because I've got too much and I don't want to waste time on it. But following up from our Playboys episode on Tartuffe, I read 2 more Molière plays at the very beginning of the month, and I'll give them 30 seconds each. I read Those Learned Ladies, and I read the Would-Be Gentleman. And I just want to put it out there that I do recommend everyone to read Molière, and Tartuffe is still the worst of the 6 that I've now read.
It's the most famous.
Yeah.
That and The Misanthrope.
The Would-Be Gentleman's hilarious. This guy's bringing in... he just wants to impress people. I guess he's come into a bit of money, so he's bringing in, fencing masters, philosophy tutors, all these different people to his home to, like, be more middle class, to engage in the right kind of pursuits. But interestingly, he brings in a music instructor, a singing instructor, and a ballet. And then the intervals in the acts are ballet performances, so that they kind of fit with the story. So it's done very nicely.
So I'm guessing, like, the first act, like, it would just be them doing terribly and then getting better as they keep going or something?
Kind of, like, he's the fool the whole time, so he doesn't really get improving anything. Most people are just happy to take his money. But then as they're rehearsing, the rehearsal then is the ballet performance that you see, which is kind of cool. So it's done in a nice way like that. And The Learned Ladies, I remember even less of this one, but it was basically something about this. Again, a philosopher had gone in to hang out with this family, and they tried to make him marry one of the daughters, but of course they already loved someone else. Turned out the philosopher was a charlatan. He was only there because they were giving him money, So it's a kind of comedy of that. The mother's like, oh, this guy's so great. And then, of course, he's not. Almost similar to Tartuffe, actually.
It is just Tartuffe, I was about to say.
Yeah. So that's those 2. And I do like Molière. So I read some Dumas. This will surprise no one.
Yay! Did you read some Balzac as well?
No, but I read Galdós, so it's close. So this book is called Chicot the Jester. It's one of those ones where, again, you got to figure out what you're reading. It's a sequel to a book I read a couple months ago. I looked it up online. I couldn't find a novel called Chicot the Jester. I found a different novel, which then it said this novel was born from a short story called Chicot the Jester. But I've got a 400-page short story here, it would seem.
I mean, for Dumas, that is about a short story. Yeah.
But whatever it is, it's here, and I liked it. So they're all essentially we've got this period of time where we have Catherine de Medici. Her son Charles is the king of France. That was in the previous book I read. Charles gets killed by his brother Henry at the end, and now this book takes on. Henry's the king, and Catherine only really comes up once near the end because she's kind of... you might have heard of Catherine de Medici. She's quite a famous... She's friends with Nostradamus, at least in some TV shows I've seen. She's a very famous character. But this guy, this king, has a jester called Chicot. But he's not a silly jester. He's a very clever jester, and he's really the only friend the king has and the only confidant that he has. So while he's getting up, dancing around on tables and being silly, but then actually he's kind of almost running things at times,
Okay.
It's a nice setup.
The way you were saying it makes me think of like the clown from King Lear. It's kind of a clown from a tragedy in a way.
Yeah.
Like he'll do some funny things, say some funny things, but also like, not really in a good position.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example at the beginning. They go to a party and Chicot says, I'm going to be the king. You can be Chicot, to the king. So he goes around as the king, but what he's really doing is trying to see, how will people react to the king? What's the gossip? What are they saying? So he's doing silly things, but there's always like a motive behind it. He's not a jester with a silly hat and bells just dancing around, But I really, really like Chicot. He has a friend called Gorenflot, who's a kind of a monk. And what he does is he assumes his friend's place, goes into this secret brotherhood meeting, and of course it's the prince leading it, and they're going to try to overthrow the king. So the deepest root of this novel is it's a, I don't say political thriller, but it's a conspiracy to overthrow the king. It's political developments, essentially. And the prince is the Duc d'Anjou, that's the brother of the king, and he wants to overthrow. And then the third brother also wants to overthrow.
So it sounds like it has some fun things to it, but it also sounds like it's pretty standard. Yeah,
a lot of these Dumas are like this. And honestly, in parts, they can be boring when it's just political machinations working their way through. Chicot really is there to make it exciting. He's there to turn a political text into a novel, essentially.
Okay.
But he does discover this brotherhood, very similar to some other Dumas stuff. Joseph Balsamo discovers a secret brotherhood. And the funny thing is, he ends up getting Gorenflot in trouble for it. And then Gorenflot gets exiled and has to leave. So they go on a donkey, and it turns into like Don Quixote or something, like wandering around France on a donkey.
Wow, that's actually
trying to find food and going on adventures. And then they get back. It's short lived, but it's almost a parody, I think, of like those kind of works, But in the meantime, there's a lot of other stuff going on, which I'll just quickly kind of touch on. So there's the Saint-Luc families, there's the husband and wife. And the funny thing is, the husband's in the Louvre, which was, of course, where the king lived at that time. And the wife has to dress in disguise, a la Shakespeare, to sneak in to the Louvre just to see her husband a day after they got married. Because apparently political business has to take precedent. And then there's, people getting locked in the Louvre as political prisoners and all this kind of stuff. So it has a lot of like needless complications, and it's not the best written. If I seem like I'm a little bit all over the place, it's because the book kind of is. It doesn't flow as nicely as some other Dumas, to be honest. It also has about 8 more sequels. So.
Oh wow! Are you going to read all 8?
No. If I pick one up, maybe, but I'm not going to go ahead and look for them. If I happen to see one, that's different.
So which number book is this in the series?
This is 2.
Okay.
And like most Dumas books, the first one was quite good. The second one, not a lot is really happening in it, and then no one even cares about the rest.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many that feel lost to time. Like you might find them, and it's like, oh yeah, there's not even a Wikipedia page about this book.
Yeah. Or if there is, it's under a different name, and you can't find what you're reading, and it was released in 6 parts, but then it was released in 11 parts, and then you got volume 3, and you don't know what you're reading. Yeah, yep. That's Dumas.
Yep.
But there are some funny bits in it. So not just because of Chicot, it's just because Dumas is a good writer. So he does put in a little bit of the usual humor, And part of that is because of Chicot. Part of it's just, for example, this one lady is complaining massively that she wasn't kidnapped. She's saying, like, I'm pretty enough, and this guy's dashing and strong. Like, he could have just come in and carried me off, but he didn't. He mustn't like me, So there's like kind of little bits of that. And there's another very funny bit where there's a siege, and the guy says, look, your army's not very good because 500 soldiers just got beaten by 3 men. You can't go around with that army. And the guy says, no, but I can go around with the 3 men who defeated them.
Yeah.
So he then takes on those three instead, you know.
And this is the intro to The Three Musketeers.
It's essentially, it's got some little forebodings and reminders of other kind of books. You know, I don't know whether it was written before or after The Three Musketeers, but little glimpses here and there. They even have a pact of 4 men versus another 4, which gave me some Three Musketeers vibes as well, like getting that gang of 4 together to go out and do their adventuring. But at the end of the day, they're trying to kill the king. And there's a bit where the king says to him, look, he says, I wouldn't kill you, I'm your brother. He says, well, you were also Charles's brother. And you poisoned him, so that's not really it's not a very good argument, you know. But there's some other bits, just, you know, there's other characters getting involved. There's one lady that everybody seems to love. There's this guy called Bussy, who's just this heroic guy. He can fend off 5 guys at once without taking a scratch, kind of thing, you know. And he gets hurt at one point, and then he loves this girl, but the prince also loves this girl, and they're all climbing over walls and sneaking into this guy's house to try to like steal his wife and all this kind of stuff, you know. And he kills him and he writes a note and says, we were hanging out together and he just happened to die. P.S. I did have a sword in my hand at the time. You know?
Just happened to keel over with some sword wounds.
Yeah. It's like, we were standing around and then he died. P.S. We both had swords and we were thrusting. So that's Dumas. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, if you read the previous book and you thought, I want the follow-up, fair enough. But if you're coming at it from the standpoint where you've maybe only read The Count of Monte Cristo or something, I definitely wouldn't jump into this one.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like if you want to be a completionist, this is not his worst. It's pretty okay.
It's very, very middle ground. Yeah. It's fine. It is what it is, you know. So I'll jump on into the second book I read. We're going to try to keep the episodes a little bit more concise than PJ and I were wont to do. Got a very quick clip here from the author, Charles Salzberg, who we actually interviewed in the past.
Hi, this is Charles Salzberg, author of Man on the Run, which features master burglar Francis Hoyt, who first appeared in an earlier novel of mine, Second Story Man. Hope you book boys liked it.
So I have the book here. Charles was kind enough to send it through to us. And we did discuss his previous book, Canary in the Coal Mine, and we chatted to him. This book's, in my opinion, much better, actually. The first book was great, but this one I really, really liked. It's called Man on the Run. Got myself a little advanced copy here. This one is a lot of fun. So Francis Hoyt is this master cat burglar, essentially. Short of stature, but he's the kind of... They kind of joke about this. Like, at first, you're almost tempted to think, he might have gotten bullied for being short, or someone might have made fun of him or something. And then you see he's just this, like, very aggressive, angry, menacing guy that would beat the life out of you if you dared to say something. But then he's also charming and charismatic and nice and friendly. So it's almost like he knows how to manipulate people. He's a very good burglar, you know, the typical kind of like no clues are ever left at the scene, all that kind of stuff, you know. He's famous, no one's ever
the expert, and one that's, it's someone's, like, you have a policeman who's just like, I will not retire until I catch this guy.
Essentially, yeah, almost exactly that, but not quite. This policeman manages to catch him, gets him in court, and then he escapes. And this is before the book, really. They just mention it. He escapes from the court somehow, and they never get him again. So then the policeman eventually retires. He's like, I did catch him. I got the closest I was going to get. He actually robbed something from the policeman at one point, you know. And what's happening now is this newspaper, well, not really, this journalist, I should say, is tracking him down. And she's not a newspaper person, sorry. She's a podcaster. And she does a true crime podcast. And she wants to get Francis Hoyt on the podcast. So she wants to do like a little mini, 6-episode run all about his exploits over the years. Nobody even knows much about this guy. There's like one blurry photo of him from 10 years ago, and that's all anyone has ever seen of the guy, you know. And he's very well respected, and with all these nice dialogues of him talking to his fence, trying to shift goods. He's kind of a bit of an ass to them as well, though. Like, he's very, here's what's happening, here are my terms. I'm the best burglar around, you do what I say kind of thing. He's not a compromising kind of guy, you know?
I mean, yeah, when he holds all the cards, I think he can do what he wants.
Yeah, but the vanity gets to him, and he lets the girl do the podcast about him. And she's a little bit scared of him, And he's like sending letters to her house, and she's like, how did you even know where I live? Like, you know, it's his job, right? He tracks things down, he stakes the place out, he looks for clues, he gets into her house at one point and just like moves the milk around and a couple things just to spook her a little bit, you know. But he's willing to do the podcast, and these, you know, he sets a whole load of restrictions. It can only be released for a week, and then it's got to be taken down. It has to be recorded at a location of my choosing. You know, there's a whole load of things so that people can't find out about him. But then she wonders, she's talking to the cops as well as part of this backstory. And then the cops start to think she's very interested. I wonder, has she met him? And should we then try to do some kind of sting operation, essentially? But the second half of the story is that his fence puts him in touch with a new fence when he goes on the run and moves to a new state. I think he moves from West Coast to East Coast or vice versa, but he gets in touch with the new fence. And they say, we've got this job. It's a mafia-run place. They're clearing it out themselves to fake a burglary or whatever. Basically what we want you to do is break in. We're going to give you the information, the key code and whatever else. You've just got to make it look like a burglary, but we're going to make it easy for you. And they're just trying... I can't remember the exact reason the mafia want to do this. Maybe it's just to get the word out about something. Whatever it is, they want this guy to pretend to break into their warehouse, essentially, their joint. He's going to make a lot of money. And even though it sounds like this is too good to be true, why are they setting him up to make millions on this fake burglary? Like, that just sounds not smart. And he knows it's not smart, but then they kind of push it, and he's like, well, it's a lot of money, and he doesn't even want the money, he just wants the reputation, because then he can say, well, I broke in and stole from the mafia. Like, that's going to boost his credibility even more. And of course it all goes wrong.
It's a trap.
Yeah.
Or something, yeah, okay.
So that side of things is happening. The podcast side of things is happening. It eventually comes together. But yeah, that's Man on the Run. It is a trap, essentially. But he's like a 30-year career of making all the right choices, and he essentially makes two wrong choices at the same time because his vanity gets to him at the end, you know?
All right. It's kind of like a Hannibal Lecter cross with like Lupin the Third type of cat burglar. And
yeah. Essentially, but the guy is charismatic as well. He's nice.
Not going to eat people, probably.
Although the girl is afraid of him, like, yeah. So the thing about him is he's never killed anyone, so that immediate risk is removed. But he looks like he could, you know. And it's like, oh, maybe he's just never killed anyone because he's never needed to, but that doesn't mean he wouldn't. And he doesn't carry a gun with him, but maybe he'll just beat you to death. Like, the fact that he's never shot anyone to death doesn't really seem to give her that much reassurance, you know.
Fair enough. I think I was seeing something that is very similar to this coming out in like a movie soon. It's basically a podcast, but they're trying to get like a real murderer on it.
Wow.
Like,
okay, so similar vibe.
Yeah. And it sounds like actually a very interesting type of story.
Honestly, the story is cool. And we get to see, you know, some of the other fun bits are seeing the girl snooping around because she doesn't want anyone to know that she's met the guy, but she's talking to the cops. She's got her producer, but she can't tell him she's talking to the dangerous guy. So she's trying to jump through hoops. He's also trying to make the fence jump through. He's refusing to jump through any hoops, you know?
Yeah.
But they want him to hit this, to case this joint. So he's kind of trying to argue with them to make them jump through hoops. It's a lot of tension because of that. I wouldn't say, you know, not like the last book, there's not that much kind of comic relief in it. But it is a bit of a page turner. You know, it's probably only about 300 pages or so, I think. And
you finished it in a day, right?
Yeah, 2 days or something. Yeah, like it's very good, yeah. Now, I'll take a very brief break to just tell everyone to go to patreon.com/booksboys, where we have some shows you might have heard of. Playboys, for example, is on there. We've got some play reviews. We're working our way through some Greek plays. Agamemnon will be up next. We've also got Dark Place Dreamers with our colleague Dark Place Robert, and a few other bits and pieces in the archives, a couple of film fellows and bits and pieces like that. Some interviews that I did with rock bands and all kinds of fun stuff. So go check that out for the price of a cup of coffee. And if you want to get in touch, you can get us at booksboys@hotmail.com, or of course at Booksboys Podcast on Instagram. I want to say that I haven't read as much, so I'm going to cover a book towards the end. It's a Galdós book called Miau. He's this little cat on the cover. I'll get to him soon. But I've only read half of it because I took a holiday, which is what I'm going to talk about now. And then next month, I've got another holiday, plus I've got to finish this, so I'm probably only going to read a couple books next month, so it might be the shortest episode we've ever done. But it does nicely lead into our sponsor, which is the Corporation for Taking So Many Holidays You Don't Have Time to Read Books.gov. So if you go and check them out, they will provide you with accommodation and flights so that you don't have to read books. So anyone who's been listening all this time and we're telling you to read books and you just think, I don't want to do it, just go on holiday. There's your excuse.
.gov. Wow.
.gov.
I didn't know that the government would be sponsoring things like this. I love it.
It's the latest initiative, yeah. Why don't you tell us about your Hadrian book?
Right. So Hadrian's Empire, it was about, 300 pages. Honestly, really short, but concise. Now, it's called Hadrian's Empire because it is just Hadrian's Empire. Like, they do talk about Hadrian for like the first 25, 30 pages, like where he grew up, how he became emperor, who his mentor was. And then there's things sprinkled in about him throughout the whole book, but most of it is just telling about what the empire was like. So for me, who never studied like Roman history and all that, it was a really good snapshot, basically from the time of Domitian to Hadrian's death.
Mm-hmm.
They talk a little.
Were you disappointed? Like, did you want more biography? Were you hoping to read a book about Hadrian, or was this what you were looking for?
So it wasn't what I was looking for, but I was still pleasantly surprised. So I did want a book that was about Hadrian and told me like what his life was like, what he was like as emperor, like even just year by year what he was doing. But I'm happy to have learned about like what it was like to be a slave, what it was like to be a soldier, what like the money at the time, how much it costs to do certain things, how much you make in a year, what life was like for slave free people, the citizens. So I thought it was actually very interesting. So it starts off, of course, with talking about Hadrian's birth. He grew up in Spain, around Seville, and like very early on, he became a senator. And so, very early on, he comes from a pretty rich family.
Yeah.
To be a senator, you have to have over 1 million, I can never pronounce it, sestertii.
Yeah. So that's upper class, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In like land and all of that. So that happened early. Then he became deputy for the consul. He went to Athens and studied a lot and really, really loved the Greeks. So he was huge.
He has my empathy.
Of Socrates and all of them. Like he was even nicknamed the Little Greek.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. He's known as the traveling emperor or the Little Greek. And I totally get it because, I mean, for what we've seen of Greece and all that, I would have fallen in love with it too.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's fantastic. And we really enjoyed our trip there in the spring. But also, we noticed that Hadrian had done a lot. So I'm not surprised he's the traveling emperor because we talked about this. We said, like, isn't there also Hadrian's Wall in Scotland? And then we looked at all these things and was like, is he the most important emperor ever?
I mean, he's really close. I don't know enough about some of the other good emperors to say that. Marcus Aurelius is probably the one other contender that we could talk about. You might be able to debate like Augustus, but yeah. So it starts off talking about Domitian as well. He was a terrible emperor, killed by his staff, and then they had to get someone who was basically a stand-in. So that was Nerva, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Nerva died, and Trajan became emperor. Trajan was Hadrian's like guardian, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was actually quite important as well. Another one of the good emperors. I believe it was Nerva who started adopting. And then right before Trajan died, he also said that Hadrian should be the next emperor, basically.
Okay. Good choice.
Yeah. Basically. Now there was a little bit of a mess with it. Like Hadrian wanted to be the messenger to give the information that I think might have been Nerva who died or Trajan who died, so that he would get in with the inner group and get to know people better. So yeah, he really tried to get his foot in the door very early. I think he was consul as well. He He held
I think
position a couple times.
a lot of the emperors would have been consul or would have made themselves consul later and things. Because the thing about Rome is emperor wasn't really a real title, whereas consul was an actual political position. So a lot of emperors made themselves consul as well to kind of legitimize their position.
Oh, I do actually have it written down. So Hadrian was the messenger to tell Trajan that Nerva died, so that Trajan would let him into like the inner circle and stuff like that. There's a funny story, actually, I completely forgot about, but his brother-in-law dismantled his carriage so that he couldn't be the messenger to go do that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He found another way around it and did it anyway. Later on, after he became emperor, he had his brother-in-law killed.
Yep. So,
like,
yeah, okay. You mentioned this. I was saying, like, oh, good guy Hadrian. He said, well, he did, like, have some senators killed and things like that.
You see, I heard that. It didn't come up in the book, like, about the senators. Like, he did have a couple people killed. He was also very interested in architecture. I mean, he was interested in everything. He loved studying, like, poetry, art. He would draw domes, basically. And one architect said, like, yeah, you're never going to be an architect or anything. Just keep drawing your pumpkins. And eventually they did use more domes in Roman architecture, to which the Christians said, oh, we can't have the pagans use this, so we're going to add domes. Then Muslim people said, well, we don't want the Christians to have that. We're going to take that. And it basically started kind of sort of with Hadrian.
Okay, so he wasn't just dabbling in architecture, he was actually good. Like he sounded like he was a bit groundbreaking with his architecture.
I don't know if he was like the main one for that type of architecture, but he definitely did have an impact on like the domes and the cathedrals with those types of domes.
Nice.
Later on in history. So yeah, he impacted everything. Traveling from Spain all the way to like Serbia, and then from like Cairo up till Scotland. He went everywhere.
It sounds like he got around, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. He was really good with the people as well. When he became emperor, he actually burned the debts from the previous emperors.
Wow. I'm just checking. So, he died at 62. Okay.
Yeah, around 134, I believe.
Yeah, okay.
So he was a really interesting guy. Would travel around to see the different training regiments for the soldiers, and would actually really boost morale. He would give bonuses if they did a really good job, and give good critiques, and people just really loved him. What was surprising to me was that after he died, his adopted son Antoninus had to really persuade the Senate to deify him. And I don't understand why it was so hard for him to become a god when it sounds like he was so loved.
Well, how was he so perfect? So it sounds easy. It's like, how do you be a good emperor? Well, you do a lot of important stuff. You are good to your army. You're good to your people. You cancel the debts. You give people bonuses. You put amazing monuments everywhere that will last for like 1,000 years. And you're just the best guy. And I'm like, cool. Well, why didn't they all just do that then?
Yeah, right? I mean, a lot of them, they didn't, obviously, they didn't have economic understanding like we have today. So many emperors would print too much money or spend too much. It would all be like big parties. I think, so to put it in perspective, like one sestertii, always going to get that wrong, would get you, I think it was 1.6 kilograms of wheat. And that's almost enough for the month. You need 1 million basically to be a senator. There was one emperor who said, like, I don't know. Well, actually, no, I think he committed suicide because he didn't have enough money to keep putting on parties.
Wow.
But he said, I only have 13 million left. Like, what?
Only 13 million. Yeah, per guy.
Yeah. Now, I guess it would have been hard because those banquets, you would have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people there, and there would be so much food. And of course, you would like vomit and eat more. And
and you'd have to, have some
so much
food and wine and, flute players and dancing girls. And it's a big, big event,
Yeah. But I feel like I learned so much from it.
Good.
Like some of the games they had. He helped build the Pantheon in Rome, so that's a huge thing for him. But also he helped with the opening of the Temple of Zeus in Athens, which unfortunately is not really there anymore.
Yeah, it was not that well preserved compared to some things we saw. But a lot of stuff we saw was from him. And I was thinking, if it hadn't been for him, a lot of the stuff in Athens wouldn't be there,
Absolutely.
We're really thankful to him.
Like we saw Hadrian's Arch, which was just outside the Temple of Zeus, and Hadrian's Library, which is still somewhat there. You got Hadrian's Wall. I think his villa might still be around, like baths and all that. He helped build like a town, Antinopolis, which was named after his lover. Basically an Adonis of sorts.
So I mean, we walked around and we thought Hadrian must just be the best. And then I was half wondering, were you going to read the book and it was going to be the opposite? It was like, oh no, Hadrian was a real scoundrel. But it sounds like, no, he just was awesome. Yeah.
I mean, it depends how you look at it. It seems like the Jewish people might not be too happy with him because he did have to deal with uprising as emperor.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. But he did also help rebuild Jerusalem. So
the guy just loved building by the sounds of things.
Yeah. He still helped. Like, oh, sure, I'm gonna stop this uprising, but I'm gonna at least help rebuild the city.
Kind of sounds like he did his best. Because there's always going to be problems. You got to kill a couple senators here and there. There's always a few problems. Sounds like he did his best.
I mean, for Rome, easily one of the best emperors they ever had. So
awesome.
He was good. I could probably keep going on talking about it, but I think you have other books to talk about as well.
Yeah, I'll mention quickly before I get in. I've only got 2 more or 3 more, but I'll mention quickly. Just went away with Dark Place Robert and another friend, and we went to see PJ. You might have heard of PJ. Went to see this guy in Gran Canaria. So that was a fun holiday, and it was one of the reasons I didn't get as much reading done this month. We had some fun activities. We went to the house of Galdós, which is why I'm going to get to Galdós in a moment. You can actually see the house that he used to live in or that he grew up in. It's a bit of a trick because he grew up there with his family, but a lot of the furnishings are actually taken from the house he lived in Madrid years later. So they kind of did a combo meal of the two. There's very little furniture from the original house remaining. But it's still cool to see, where he would be writing his books and things like that in his desk. And they even showed this is his toilet. It's like, could have done without that, but okay. I did some other nice things there, and that was good fun. And it was good to see PJ. And we did record some poems, so hopefully on Patreon soon, there'll be a Poetry Pals episode coming out. And we did surfing and aquariums and weird hippie camps and all sorts of amazing things. So it was fantastic. I have 2 more books that I read, and the first one is called Pétalos, Petals. It's a Mexican book by Guadalupe Nettel. It's a book of short stories that was lent to me by my dance teacher.
Oh,
who I believe you've met.
Yes, I have. I'm assuming the audience hasn't.
Yeah, I was talking directly to Alex there, not to the audience. I don't think that you've all met my dance teacher. All 3 of you, whatever it is. So, Pétalos. This is a collection of short stories by a Mexican lady. And they're basically stories about unusual people. So, none of them are they're a bit weird, I'll just say. But I really enjoyed it. Now, it's a very short book. It's coming in here, let me see, about 130 pages. And that's divided into stories. So they are short stories. This isn't a 500-page novel or anything.
Something a normal person could do rather easily.
Yeah, again, I think I read most of it in a day, maybe finish it off on day 2. But you could sit down, you could take the stories, there's 5 or 6 stories. You could read one a day or spread it out over a week. I think it's very doable. Now, I'd never heard of the author. Don't know that much Mexican literature, to be honest. But I really, really liked these stories. So I'll give a couple of examples. The most famous one is, of course, it's Pétalos and Other Stories. Pétalos is the famous one. You're not going to believe what the petals are. I'm not going to ask you to guess because you would literally never get it. The girl is called Flor, which is, flower.
Yeah.
And the petals that she drops are actually her excrement.
Oh, lovely.
So and Flora doesn't know about this though. Like, this is a story of a kind of pervert who goes into women's bathrooms to just smell the excrement.
Okay, they smell like flowers?
It's because the girl's called Flowers that the title's called Petals. That's really the only, it's what she drops behind, essentially. That's really the only reason. It's a weird one, but yeah, that's the story. He just, he just goes in and he can tell her smell. He's like, her scent is so much different from everyone else's. And he goes around all these different, cafes and everything. And he waits for her to go to the bathroom and goes in to get the scent. No, it doesn't really go anywhere. It's just it's just a few pages about him being kind of creepy. That's Petals.
Wow. Okay.
So I said there were stories about unusual people.
Yes, that one's definitely unusual. You see, I generally like the German children's stories, which are just like the kid sucks his thumb and then it gets cut off. Yeah. Okay, sure.
I guess this is along those grounds. The very first story we see, some of them are a bit lighter. So I'll give you an example. It's a photographer, and I've not made very many notes on this one. It's not one of my favorites. But essentially, this photographer is obsessed with, he wants to catch the moment the eye blinks.
Okay.
So it's just his obsession with that, with these super clear photos that are just trying to catch the blink, And again, it's about 10 pages. So most of these, there's not a huge, plot development or anything. It's just a little snapshot into their lives. And, it's really, really nice, though. Some of them are interesting. So the one I like the most is this chap who kind of has a bit of a mundane life, but he walks through the park every Sunday, and he always thinks the park is so well kept, but I never see the gardener. So one day he goes in on a Saturday, and he sees the gardener, and the gardener greets him by his name. And he says, "How did you know me?" And the gardener says, "It's my job to know everyone." So, that doesn't seem true, but I'll allow it, And what happens here is the gardener teaches him a little bit about gardening. And the guy who initially scorned at it, this Senor Okada, he really scorned gardening. He ends up really liking it. And it's kind of wholesome and good for him to get involved with this stuff instead of his humdrum 9-to-5 world. And the gardener tells him the flower that you're most like, or the plant that you're most like, is a cactus. And he really identifies with this, and he starts doing things and saying, well, I'm doing this because I'm a cactus. This is cactus kind of behavior, and he really gets into it. And he goes every week for a couple of months, and he really, goes to the gardener. At the end, the gardener says, I want to show you something special. And he has a bonsai tree that he's been working on. He's kind of kept it out back, hidden away. And he's been spending many years just tending to this bonsai tree. And sadly, that's the last time he ever sees him. The next week he comes, the gardener's not there. I think he was in hospital, but he doesn't die or anything. But then the guy just never goes back. So I thought it was going to be like a passing of the torch almost. I've got you into this way of life. I'm showing you the bonsai. Now I'm sick in hospital. I thought maybe the guy was going to try to take over the gardener or something. But no, it doesn't go that route at all. He just enjoys his time and then moves on again.
Okay. I can see how that could be nice, but I feel there's no ending to it. I'm expecting either something horrific or funny or important to happen. I imagine a Junji Ito style horror story, or I just had to look it up again, but Strufelpeter. It's a German children's book, but it always has an ending that is supposed to teach you something.
Yeah, I suppose they're more just brief snapshots. It's almost like they're one episode in a TV show, but it's the only episode you've seen. It's just here's a quick snapshot into the life of an unusual person, and then we're moving on to the next one. And some of these are only, 10 to 20 pages. There's not really that much development. There's no sequel. There's no outcome. Sometimes. Some of them have outcomes, but not all of them. But that was my favorite one because it was just peaceful and it was less weird.
Fair enough. I can see enjoying that. And
yeah. There's another one I really
meaningful.
like. This girl is describing this like attractive guy, and she's kind of getting sexual in her descriptions. And at first, I thought she was there with him, but it turns out that the lady he's about to have sex with is a different lady, and this woman is essentially spying. And at one point, she opens the curtain, hoping the guy kind of sees her or whatever. So there must be like apartments across the way or whatever, you know. But she's really, really getting aroused watching this guy with another woman and just wishing that it was her. And it's just this little snapshot into her obsession with the guy that doesn't even know she exists because he's got a woman, you know. And of course, she's kind of like, well, if I was there, I would do better than she would be doing right now, and you know, all this kind of stuff. But open the curtain, hoping he notices her, and of course, he's not even looking in her direction because he's there with someone. But it's just this little snapshot into her obsession with him. And I suppose that's what all these stories are. They're just little bits of someone's life. There's one with these guys who all kind of hang out on the roof of this house, and they always refer to, he's looking for this kind of ultimate loneliness, and that's his kind of quest during the summer. These kind of kids are hanging out on the roof, and they're looking for the true loneliness. And it's just their story of like one of them, their mother dies, so it's kind of, that's a sad moment. And that one ends with, I mean, imagine this. Someone says, my mother has died. And she says, well, no hug I could give him would make him feel better. So I'll do what a mother does, and I will give him my breast.
Okay.
And then he just takes it and cries and just covers her, what she considers a part of her body she hates, with tears.
Okay.
So these are unusual people.
I can understand that one a little bit more. It gives me like Grapes of Wrath feeling. If you know the very ending of that book, but
I never read it. I should have.
I don't. Spoiler for Grapes of Wrath. Come back in 30 seconds if you care.
Hit the 30-second
100-year-old. Yeah.
Button.
Basically, so her kid dies and she has breast milk. Then there's someone who's very, very poor and just about to die, needs water or something, and she gives like her breast milk to him. Just
okay,
alive. It's like an older man, and that's kind of how it ends.
Right. This one, I suppose, is it's similar in the face of it, but I guess there's more that psychological thing of like trying to replace the mother almost.
Sure, there's a very psychological part for Grapes of Wrath as well.
Okay.
It is like it's very hard for the woman doing that at the end. And,
right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe it is quite similar then. The last one is a diary. This guy's writing a diary to... This lady's writing a diary to her doctor about her health issues, really. She pulls out her hairs and things like that. She's got some obsessive sort of compulsions. And she tries to avoid people and avoid dating. And she meets this nice guy called Victor. And she really shies away from him at first and tries to avoid him. And he says, no, look, you don't need to... You're trying to avoid me because of your problem. I already know about it. I have a similar problem. And we'll be good together. So they start kind of dating and try to get on together until it ends in tragedy one day when she has a compulsion relating to a knife. So you think, they finally find it. And, you know, this is the one guy that will understand her and be suitable for her. And then it ends badly anyway. So that's the most dramatic one, I suppose. And it's the last one.
And that's kind of what I was expecting for the others. I was expecting like a twist in a way. And that at least fulfills that a bit more.
Yeah, I suppose the book ends with a twist, if that helps. You know, that last story. So,
fair enough.
I have one last book. I've hyped it up mostly just because of the cat picture. It's the Galdós book. It's Miau. Very important. This isn't spelled M-E-O-W or anything. It's spelled M-I-A-U, and that's actually incredibly important. So the title of the book is probably the best bit about it, if I'm going to be honest. Because the title means something.
Okay. So, no, is this another like what is it? Anyway, go on.
I have it here. The MIAU stands for something in Spanish, obviously. So it stands for morality. Then, for some reason, in English, income tax. Then aduanas, which are customs, and then unificación de la deuda, so unifying debt. So these are like economic kind of policies, I guess, right? So that's what the MIAU stands for. But also, the second aspect of that is that it's about this family who kind of look like cats. So it's this guy, he's worked 35 years in this kind of corporate job. It might even be a government job. I can't quite remember. And he's 2 months from retirement, and they decide we're going to lay you off now, and you're not going to get your pension, basically. And it's this sad tragedy for him. He's like, but in 2 months' time, I would have got this full pension. Now I can't feed my family. And he's got these 3 women living with him. I guess it's his wife and her 2 sisters or whatever. And they look like cats. And people call them like Les Miaus, like the cats, cat family, cat ladies. And that plays into it. So the MIAU stands for something, but it's also Miau because the family look like cats, hence the photo. But also, PJ told me that the book is set in Madrid, and in Madrid there's a slang that they call Madrid people gatos, which is cats. So there's like a third part to the title. So the title's very clever. There's a lot going on with the title. And that's the best part.
Interesting. Yeah, I was about to say, like, is this another Middlemarch? That's what I was trying to think. Like,
yeah, it's...
Yeah, okay.
I mean, my version has 100 pages of, introduction and notes and scholarly texts and whatever. But the actual book is probably about 300 to 400 pages. I'm only about halfway, to be honest. I need a few days just to finish it off. I got sidetracked on holiday. What I'm reading so far is fine. It's enjoyable enough. It's a bit slow. I've read better Galdós. He has 3 really famous books, Doña Perfecta, Misericordia, and Marianella. And PJ and I refer to something that's super melodramatic as Marianella dramatic, because that's a really dramatic book. This one is just like, there's some people hanging around and it's sad,
Okay. Yeah.
So not a lot is happening. But essentially, the main sadness is this guy's, his whole economic situation is ruined, right? So he's going around trying to talk to, like, I'll write a letter to this guy. He used to like me. He'll take me in and he'll get me a job. And no, he won't. Your connections were all bogus, or they only worked while you were in an important position. Nobody really cares about you anymore. So there's that kind of fall from grace, that sad aspect for him. Meanwhile, there's a situation, there's some love stories with... so the funny thing is as well, the wife is called Doña Pura, which is like pure. But it made me think of her,
sounds
right?
Like,
yeah. That extra little cat reference as well. And they mentioned that there was always the town is always laughing at them because they look like cats, kind of cat-like faces and everything. So they're a little bit maligned. The one lady, they used to have money, so she's always bringing people to the house to see all these fancy things they have. Look how old these curtains are, these amazing, embroidered, fantastic curtains. We can't afford to eat, but as long as the neighbors see our curtains, they'll think that we're rich, and see all our fancy furniture. And it's really about them keeping up appearances, when really they should be selling that stuff and trying to feed themselves, But they're really obsessed with status.
So keeping up appearances.
Literally,
that show.
That's true. My favorite TV show ever. So it's
no,
kind of
come on.
Oh, okay. Top 2. So it's kind of sad, the sad aspect of this, and that's something Galdós is considered the Spanish Dickens or Balzac.
Okay.
Honestly,
so far...
I like him, but I do think he's the weakest of the 3: Dickens, then Balzac, then Galdós, probably.
You see, I was going to say, like, this might be a bit more like Tale of Two Cities type of Galdós or something.
Yeah, I suppose even Dickens's books I don't like, so that's fair enough. I've only read 4 Galdós, and I've read 5 and I like 3 of them. But there's a love story as well. One of the girls, she's going to marry, and there's a little kid, Luis, and he's always saying, "Are you going to marry my dad? Are you going to marry my dad? My dad's a handsome man and a strong knight, and he's this and he's that." And the woman's like, "This is a bit weird because I don't want to marry your dad. I am engaged to this other guy." But the dad, Victor, is kind of constantly... He's going in and he's really putting her down, and he's also then putting down the man she's meant to marry and trying to make it about him, and he really takes control of the house. He turns up and they don't want him there, but he just decides, well, I'm going to stay here. I am obviously a relative. I have the right to come, and they never hadn't spoken to him in a while or whatever. They'd fallen out with him, but he just kind of reinstalls himself in the house and almost kind of takes over while they're all in their distraught situation. And tries to get himself with the woman, right up until the point where she eventually starts to give in and say, okay, I am having thoughts about someone other than my boyfriend, my fiance. I do like this other guy. And then he's like, oh, no, you should just stick with your fiance. So he's kind of just manipulating her emotions in that sense. So he's the villain of the piece. But I can't say where it goes because I'm only halfway through. So I don't know, what happens if there's a big happy ending, if there's a twist. I don't know what happens to the characters. But so far, he seems to be the villain. And these sisters, one's obsessed with status. One seems to be a bit irrelevant. And the other one is just described as like the perfect, virtuous, self-sacrificing, doing everything for everyone else kind of woman. So that's where I'm at with that one. But I'm going to finish it. I'm going to spend the next few days finishing it. And then I'll start into next month's readings. I think next month I'm going to try to hit the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Yay!
So, waiting a long time on that one. I bought it like 2 years ago. I'm going to promise that next month we'll do the Scarlet Pimpernel.
And I watched it in like French class, I think, over 10 years ago. Probably 15 years ago, actually. It is a fun one, as far as I remember. Again, it's been almost 15 years, so it's hard to remember.
Yeah.
But I know I enjoyed it, movie version at least. I don't know how the book is. And hopefully next month, I will have a book that I said I would finish, I think, on the 2-year anniversary, and still hadn't finished. There's a hint for everyone, including you.
Good. I'm looking forward to that one.
Oh, you will be.
Yeah. I'll be very, very quick with this, but I forgot I did read one more book called The Shakespeare Killer. And
you mentioned that.
Yeah, this one, it was less about Shakespeare than I thought. But
it was just about like killing lawyers.
Yeah, so there's a serial killer who's killing lawyers, and there's this FBI guy who's assigned to this team that's meant to be not looking after serial killers, catching them, the opposite actually. So he's going to catch serial killers, and by doing profiling, so by looking at the clues and thinking how would they think and what matches together and the ammo and everything else, and kind of creating profiles that will then help catch them. And he's so good at it that the FBI decides, we're getting used for political kind of stunts by politicians and presidents. They're blaming us for things and they're trying to use us. What we really need is a new image. So they make this guy like FBI propaganda boy, basically, and they put him on like Jimmy Fallon and all these like TV shows and do interviews with him and try to like talk about his successes to make the FBI look good on like an individual level, like someone that people might relate to, and he's handsome and they dress him up nice and whatever. He doesn't want to do it. He's like, I've got work to do. This is nonsense, but they kind of make him do that. And they send a reporter with him who, of course, then a love story ensues. And I really, really liked this one. It was really fantastic. So,
good.
Hold on a second. I do believe we are getting a call, Alex. I'll be back with you in a few minutes.
Sounds good.
Hello, you're through to Books Boys. You've got Dean on the line. Who's calling?
Doug Wood.
Hi, Doug. We were just talking about your book, so it's a lovely coincidence that you've called in. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am good. We're working our way through the show and all the books that we've read this month, and we were just talking about the Shakespeare Killer, which I loved, by the way. Am I right then in thinking this is the only book of yours that I've read, but this is the second one in the series? Is that right?
Yeah, this is the sequel to Blood on the Bayou, and is a further journey of the FBI profiler finding serial killers.
Fantastic. I loved it, by the way. It kind of makes me want to go read the first one now, so I'll maybe try and pick that up because the idea is fantastic. With the profilers. DeMeglio is a fantastic character as well. What made you want to do it about FBI profilers specifically?
Well, I was fascinated by the little known fact that in the United States there are, according to FBI statistics, as many as 50 serial killers out there at any given time. I mean, we so far exceed other countries in the number of serial killers we have. No one is even close to us. I mean, you could combine all the serial killers in all the other countries and they probably would not amount to the number of serial killers we have here. So it's a little known fact. I mean, a lot of people are not aware of that, and it's fascinating. And serial killers are just, from a psychological standpoint, as an author, are really interesting people to write about because they're so complex. And not one size fits all. It's most bank robbers are pretty much the same as any other bank robber.
Yeah.
You want to go in, take the cash, and go. Right? Serial killers have totally different mindsets and different motivations. And the profilers who go after them, these FBI profilers, which is a relatively new approach. It dates back to the 1970s when the programs were first begun. So it's not as if it's long established science. And it's not science. It's a lot of art involved in it. So it's a great kind of puzzle that they go through, and they put the pieces of the puzzle together. So as an author, if you're writing, criminal fiction, that it's first of all, you've got a very interesting character who's doing the killing, the complex character. And then you have the puzzle solver and the profiler, and he or she is putting together all the pieces of the puzzle. And then you interweave some other characters into the story to make it more real and interesting. It's what I like to call plausible fiction, so that if someone reads my books, they walk away saying, I know that's fiction, but that could really happen. And with serial killers, there's a certain, really interesting interest factor to a lot of people who are curious about that kind of stuff. So that kind of motivated me to go from the other works I had been doing and decide to take a shot at doing something with a serial killer and a profiler.
Yeah, it's a great concept, and it's something I suppose that I think you'd be lying if you say that it doesn't intrigue you. The standard person, the idea of a serial killer, there is just something intriguing. As you say, a bank robber, they just want to get money, whatever, A lot of single crimes, assault, even murder, well, it might be a revenge motivation or something like that. But the serial killer is interesting because they're killing a lot of people, and it's very curious what makes them tick. And I suppose that is essentially what the book is about to some degree.
Exactly.
And
for the profiler to try to figure out what it is that makes them tick, to try to, and this is literally what they do, figure out what that makes them tick so they can predict when they might strike again and then stop. I mean, think about the legend of Jack the Ripper. It's still as pertinent today as it ever was. What other kinds of crime stories have that kind of longevity and fascination with people who are curious about it? Because of the fact that he or she, someone named him Jack because that's what they named him. Jack the Ripper was a very a very fascinating character, and the fascination continues to this day. And that's, like you said, it's because it's different than your single passionate killer or your bank robber or your whatever.
Yeah,
it's a completely different ilk of people.
And it does seem that there are different types, right? So you've got the type that maybe has some kind of vendetta on a particular group of people, and then you've got this almost charismatic cult leader type as well. Do you think that those are quite different in their mentality?
They're all very different in what they, not all, but there's variations of what motivates serial killers, right? But they're all psychopaths. Yeah, so there are certain consistent things about them. They're obviously not sane thinking people. And they get caught up in this complex, this motivational complex that they think they've got to commit these acts for whatever their justification in their brain tells them it is. But their justifications are all over the line, and it is the great challenge of profilers is that as many attributes of serial killers as they can accumulate by interviewing them and meeting with them and studying them, there's always another wrinkle that comes about that they learn anew every single time they do this. When I do my books, I do a great deal of research. So I talk to profilers and I talk to people in law enforcement, and I haven't had a chance to talk to a serial killer yet, but that's hopefully not going to happen. But in any event, I get a chance to really learn about how this process evolves and how they think, and it's quite fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Well, you preempted my next question, which was what's the level of research required? So I guess you had to go and talk to people. You had to figure out, the statistics that you mentioned in the book about the amount of serial killers in the US. Now, part of that, I am curious, do you think it is just that there is massively more serial killers, or is it, that it's defined slightly differently, or it's looked into a little bit more and we're getting more positives? Maybe other countries would have more if they kind of put the work in.
Well, I think, that's a great question. And I think that my speculation on the answer to that is that there are more than you know about in other countries, simply because most countries don't keep any kind of statistics like this. So if there's a murder in a town, 5 miles away, and there's another one in a town, 5 miles in the other direction, they don't make the connection because they're usually in different towns. So the serial killer doesn't say, just kill in his neighborhood. He has a wide range of the geography that he might cover. So most serial killers are not discovered in many instances because the dots are not connected. They're independent investigations, and it's only through luck sometimes that somebody says, "Hey, this didn't I read about killing like that in
Something
such and such a
similar.
county?" Then they make contacts, and before you know, the car deck gets built, and they suddenly see that they have a serial killer in their hands. So I think that crime in the United States is obviously higher statistically across the board than most other countries. But on the other hand, I think part of that is because we're so into the statistics and recording of all this stuff, unlike some other countries. But while I do believe that our rates are probably higher, I think other countries have higher rates than they're aware of because they don't do quite the level of statistical research that we do, or they don't publicize it the way we do. The other thing. If you want to learn about FBI profiling, you can get their manual. It's free. You just go online, download their manual, and you can learn all the stuff that they do about profiling. So it's because we're so open about that kind of stuff, the statistics come out. And so there's different organizations that track this stuff and they report this stuff. And it's amazing how much you can learn about the topic as a writer if you're willing to do the research.
It's good that it's all there for you, though.
It is. And the other thing that's amazing as a writer is, I'll be reading something and I want to talk to somebody, a person, about it. And I'll, reach out to one contact after another, 6 degrees separation, whatever. And I'll get connected to somebody that doesn't know me from a hole in the ground. And I'll start the conversation and say to them, look, my name's Doug. I'm writing a book. Would you like to talk to me about it? I'd like to talk to you about whatever it is. When I first started writing dozens of years ago, I figured if I made those phone calls, someone would go, I don't know who you are, and hang up.
Yeah.
The exact opposite happens.
Wow.
People love to talk to you. I've talked to criminologists. I've talked to wardens of prisons. I've talked to clerics, and for sort of to understand the Islamic view of some terrorism that I've written in books. I've talked to countless people, doctors and scientists, and they all. I have yet, and this is absolutely true, I have yet to have a single one of them say, I don't know who you are and I don't want to talk to you.
Not one.
Not one.
Wow.
Not one. And I've probably spoken to, in the course of writing, the novels I've written, I've probably talked to 100 people.
Goodness me. So that's a good success rate. And how many novels have you written, actually?
10 books and 7 of them are novels.
Okay. So you're talking to an average of about, let's say, roughly 10 people per book, and you're getting 100% success rate. People want to talk to you.
I've literally never had someone say to me, I don't want to talk to you.
Wow.
I've even had, and one of my books talks about hacking computers and this kind of stuff. I talked to a hacker, and why would he talk to me? It was like, if you called up someone you thought was a hacker through different connections, and you said, hi, I'm writing a book about, one of my characters hacks into computers. Can I talk to you? Because I want to make sure I have the verbiage down and I make sure I describe what they do accurately. Well, I never dreamed he'd talk to me. But he was in Eastern Europe, and I said to him, I asked him, why are you comfortable talking to me? Because I always ask in the end, I'm just amazed. And he said, what are you going to do? I'm in Eastern Europe. No one's going to come and get me. And I said, well, in my books, I always try to give acknowledgments to the people that help me. You want me to give you one? And he goes, no, that I don't want you to do. So of the many people I've spoken to, probably half of them, when I offer to put a acknowledgement, more than half, when I offer to put an acknowledgement in the books, they say no.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense. That's understandable. Having a conversation sort of off the record. Yeah, why not? That's good.
That's it. So it's very informal. And sometimes I send them excerpts from chapters, and they'll read them and correct things. And I spoke in one of my books involving rockets to the moon, whatever. And I wanted to make sure I fully understood telemetry and all the things about rockets and launching people into space. So I spoke to a chief rocket scientist of one of the major independent commercial rocket companies. And he spent hours with me explaining stuff. But then he said in the end, you do not name me.
Right, okay.
Remember the name. Then the funniest was I wrote one of the earlier books I wrote has scenes in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. and I couldn't find out information about Guantanamo Bay. So I, through another bunch of connections, sort of 6 degrees of separation kind of stuff, you can usually find somebody. I ended up getting connected to 2 ex-commandants, Marine commandants of Guantanamo Bay, who ran Guantanamo Bay. Goodness. They told me all sorts of stuff. And at the end of the discussion, I said to them, I assume you guys don't want me to acknowledge you in the book. They go, no, yeah, use our names. We want to be acknowledged. And I said, are you sure? Are you telling me stuff you're supposed to be telling me? And they both said, we don't care. We're retired. What are they going to do? So they're acknowledged. So it's, you meet the writing, the great joy of writing is the research and the people you meet to help you write you. But so many people want to help you. It's phenomenal how helpful they can be and how much you can learn in the process about people and about the subjects you're trying to write about. Because I write what I said earlier. I like to write what I call plausible fiction. I want people to believe my books knowing that they're fiction, but saying to themselves, that could really happen.
Yeah. I like a bit of realism myself. I don't go in for sort of fantasy stuff that I don't find believable. What I'm reading, I have to think this could have happened or could happen next week or something. It has to feel real to me to kind of engage with it better. So I totally get that. It's fantastic that so many people are willing to talk to you, though. And you can tell when reading it, apart from the few statistics, you can also tell this is a plausible story. And you can see the level of research that went in, even just talking about the profiling. You're not just making stuff up. It reads as though, okay, this guy actually has put some work in and knows what he's talking about, which is fantastic. That's what I'm looking for usually.
It's like, one of my favorite authors is Tom Clancy, who, and the thing about Clancy is he went overboard on detail. Of, you could design a submarine after reading in Down for Red October. I don't get that far.
Yeah. And
sometimes my editor will say to me, they don't need that much detail. And I'm like, I want them to understand how this works. I want them to see it, it's an interesting observation you make, because there are some readers who really want to see, the detail and understand it. And there are others who would just prefer to rush the story along and whatever it is. So if you read a Tom Clancy book, you'll see a lot of detail. A John Grisham book, you'll see a lot of detail.
Yes.
If you read a Robert Ludlum book, or even a Patterson book, there's not a lot, and it's just a lot of action. So there's that kind of yin and yang of writing. That's the author's challenge. Whenever if you're a researcher like I am, you're prone to be like Clancy. But you try to make sure you don't get too far into designing submarines, but you yet at the same time you give the reader hopefully a reason to read your book and enjoy the book in the first place. You
got to find a balance, I guess. I read a lot of John Grisham when I was younger in my teens, and it's like, oh, he clearly knows his stuff, but then there are those moments where it's like, oh, I did want to read a novel, though. This is a lot of information. Like I'm not here to learn to be a lawyer,
There you go. Exactly. That's the thing. It's we're not writing textbooks. We're writing fiction, and it's supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be the kind of thing that you want to sit at the beach or at night when you're hanging out and you want to read just for the enjoyment of reading. So an author, you're always challenged with going from professor to entertainer, because you really want to entertain the reader as opposed to teach the reader.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the always the difficult challenge in writing, in that, because you got to have a little bit of both. Hopefully more entertainment than you do teaching, but you got to have a little bit of teaching to get the whole story across to your readers.
So the actual book comes out in 2 weeks or so, is that right?
The official release date is June 13th.
June 13th. So 2 weeks. Okay, about 2 weeks. So I've refrained from going really any in-depth aspects of the story before the book actually comes out, because it's a fantastic book and I'm recommending it, and I'd like people to get the chance to check it out first for themselves. But just to dip in that little bit, we've covered a few we've talked about the profiling and everything. Essentially, we have a murderer, and the title gives that away. It's the Shakespeare killer. Where did the idea come from to use Shakespeare? I'm a big Shakespeare fan. I do a second podcast where we just review Shakespeare plays, so I love Shakespeare. Really? Yeah.
Because I love Shakespeare. In college, I took every course on his books I could, or his slaves. And the thing about Shakespeare is that there's so much that people don't realize is colloquial today that is all attributed to him. And I mean, it's amazing. His body of work is second to none.
Oh yeah.
So the premise that the person learns very early in the book, so it's not a spoiler alert, is that this serial killer is killing lawyers. So the natural inspiration I got from that was from Shakespeare's First We Kill All the Lawyers. And so that idea of having Shakespeare intertwined throughout the book with quotes from Shakespeare, and that kind of makes it a little interesting, I hope, for readers, particularly those who are into Shakespeare. There's hints of Shakespeare writing in many places in the book that are not literal quotes from Shakespeare, but that take up, some of his themes, because his themes were always almost very, very dark, and like most of his plays were about, death and suicide and love lost and, you name it. I mean,
oh yeah,
not a lot were Much Ado About Nothing. Most of them were a lot tougher than that was. So it fit the model of being able to keep a theme in the book, and the only thing I regretted was that Shakespeare chose to name the guy who said that Dick the Butcher, which is not the greatest literary name that one could come up with for a new book, but that's the name he gave, so that's the name he got. So it was that was interesting. But that's why Shakespeare's in there.
And it's funny to me as well because you're stuck with Dick the Butcher, right? So that's the name that the murderer's kind of going by. But I guess the media prefer the Shakespeare Killer. I guess that's a bit snappier.
Yeah, I think if I did a book called Dick the Butcher, I don't think it might get on the Food Channel, but I don't think it's going to get on any of the lists.
Yeah.
Fiction.
Can we talk a little about the reporter / potential love interest, Lynn? Was that just you felt that there should be another character to flesh things out? Did you particularly want to go down the love interest route, or what was the thinking behind that character?
Well, if you ever get a chance to read Blood on the Bayou, one of Chris D'Ameglio's, who's the FBI profiler, one of his problems is relationships with women.
Yeah,
he's had some problems. So what I do when I write, the first thing I do is I write little miniature biographies of every one of the characters I'm going to put in the book. So not that that's going to get in the book, but when I'm writing, I remember who they are, so they're a person. As opposed to just kind of making it up along the way. I try to understand who this individual is that I've created, in terms of the narrative in the book. So Chris D'Ameglio, who's the FBI profiler, you can't have just a one-dimensional character. You have to have a character that has dimension and issues and those kinds of things that people can relate to in either directly or indirectly, whatever it is. So, in a good novel, you want to have some conflict in personalities, and you want to have some kind of friction that builds towards a conclusion in the end of the narrative. So it was natural for FBL profiler to have love interests and a strong woman who comes into the narrative that has strong opinions and is sort of a mental match to this very sophisticated profiler. So that's the kind of the germ of the idea, and then from there you create the characters and the friction and the conflict and all the things you try to create that'll keep an interest it keeps the reader interested, and also sort of makes them ask questions. It makes them wonder. It makes them, makes it, what you try to do, you put in red herrings that are hints that are not, and you try to lead different paths along the way, and hopefully, there's a few surprises that happen, but then when the surprise happens, you hope that your reader sits there and says, I should have seen that coming, but I missed that one and missed this one or whatever. I always find it interesting when I write my novels, because I always try to have a twist of an end, that's kind of interesting, and cliffhanger, or whatever you want to call it. And I'll invariably get some folks who will say, "Oh, I figured that out right away," and I'm going, "How the hell did you figure that out right away?" But okay, if they figured it out right away, God bless them. Maybe they read the back pages first and then they read the front. I don't know.
But there are some red herrings, and there are little clues that not everything that's said turns out to be the way the book's going to go. So there's definitely a couple times where I thought, oh, I started reading too much into it. Like, oh, maybe this guy's going to do this and she's going to do that. And of course, it's not. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, what's next?
That's the fun part. You're trying to as a writer, what you're sometimes doing is you're teasing the audience.
Yeah.
You try to surprise them and rope them in and then let them go, and that's part of the joy of writing. Is that because imagine if you just sort of wrote a straight narrative, forget it. I mean, it wouldn't be any fun as a writer. The truth is, and I'm not belittling reporters. I think reporters do wonderful jobs, but their job is to report the facts in factual order, linear order, and to tell you what happened on a given day. Now, lots don't do that anymore, but when they're doing their job right, that's what they do. Well, that makes for some fascinating reading short term. But if you tried to write a novel that way, I think it would probably be a documentary. I guess it would be a biography, or it wouldn't be fiction.
Yeah, it might be forgettable. Yeah. So what's next? Are we going to see a third book, or are you working on something new?
I've got a couple. Writers always have a bunch of ideas, but I do have if I do decide to go down a third a trilogy, if you will, for Chris de Meglio, I have an idea. Okay. That is, but my publisher swears me to secrecy. I'm not allowed to talk about those things. And what I try to do, and what inspires my books for the most part, is I observe what's happening around us. So my book, there's a book named Dark Data, Control Alt Delete, which is about a conspiracy between an Islamic terrorist, a Russian oligarch, and a computer hacker that wreaked financial terror across the world. I was thinking about social media in there. There's a video you can watch from that, allegedly leaked from Google, but who knows if it was leaked or not. Called The Selfish Gene, and it's all about how social media can program people. Social media, and we're seeing that big time today. So about 2 years ago, I wrote that book, and then I, when I saw that a lot of people didn't know that China has a space program that's more advanced than ours, and has astronauts in space, and is landed on the far side of the moon. No one else has. They're far more advanced than we are. So I came up with the idea of dragging on the far side of the moon. So I try to pick up things that are happening,
that are relevant,
and turn them into an interesting novel with some twists and turns in it. So serial killers got me right now, and that's fascinating me now. But there are some other things that are going on in the world that lend themselves to some pretty interesting fictional stories.
Sure.
And that's why most authors pick that kind of stuff up.
Yeah, it's good to stay relevant, stay with what's actually happening in the world. Let me ask you, before we get to the final question, do you want to take a minute real quick just to plug, your the book's come out on the 13th. Do you want to plug your website or tell us where we can get the book?
Well, the book, you can buy the book. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are. I was going to say wherever books are sold. Unfortunately, there's not much brick and mortar left anymore.
Sadly,
yeah. But yeah, you can get it. You just search Shakespeare, the Shakespeare Killer, on either Barnes & Noble or Amazon. Cool. They've got some promotional prices on pre-order right now. My publisher's doing, so take advantage of that. But then it'll be available on the 13th. And if you also want to know more about my other novels, it's douglasjwood.com is my author site, and you can see all this stuff there. And I also do a lot of blogging on issues that are ancillary to the books that I write. So if you want to learn more about serial killers and profiling and the like, there's a whole blog series that I have on my website as well, so that you can learn about that. So
we'll put a link to the site as well.
A lot of writing.
Cool. Well, Douglas, it's been lovely to have you on. I'm going to ask you the final question, which is something we ask all the authors we've interviewed over the last couple of years. If there's any existing book that you wish you'd been the person to write, what would it be?
It's a great question. I would. God, there's so many authors that I love. It would be something by Grisham.
Okay.
Because I'm a lawyer, and I sort of have a subconscious interest in a lot of what he writes, having some knowledge base with it. It'd be one of his books. Okay. I mean, I love his writing, and but then I love Scott Turow is another lawyer who I think is a great writer, and William Patterson is a great writer, and McCarthy. I mean, there's so many. That's a great question, and it's a hard question for me to answer. I never thought of it that way. I wish I'd written all those books.
Yeah, Grisham's fantastic, but I mean, maybe again, I'm coming at it. I was 15 when I read them. It's a kind of okay. You read 10 in a row. They're all the same by that time. It's what I call Agatha Christie.
That's the one thing that that's interesting because the authors who do that and have that formula and they repeat it time and time again, they do very well.
Yeah.
The reality. My publisher always says to me, why can't you keep to one model? And I said, because my brain doesn't work that way. I wrote my first series of books was about a woman who runs for president of the United States. First 3 books. The next book was about social media, brainwashing people. The next one was about a battle between the United States and China over colonization of the moon. The next one is about the serial killer. So I go all over the place because that's what motivates me. That's what fascinates me in terms of what I enjoy doing, where my passion lies. But I get the model. I mean, the model for folks that are out there with dozens of books is. I mean, I can't quarrel success. No, it's not my game. But you wonder. I sometimes say when you get to the 5th or 6th or 10th book that person's written, don't you already know what's going to happen? I mean, how many ways can you tell that story? But the guy, they're great writers, and people love their prose, and they sell books, and God bless them. I can't. I wish I was selling books the way John Grisham and folks like that were. I'm not. So with your help, maybe I will. But
we all just do what works for us, I guess. In the end.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, it's been wonderful having you on. As I say, I'll put the link to your website and everything in the show notes, and hopefully people will check out the book in a couple of weeks when it comes out. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, take it easy now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, wow. Well, amazing coincidence there. Just as we were talking about the Shakespeare killer, Douglas J. Wood, the author, calling in to have a chat with us about it. Fantastic. And the coincidences never stop. On Books Boys, that's the show. We did it. We finished our first full episode.
Yay! I mean, I was on one episode before, kind of, sort of. I talked about 1984 and...
yeah, you did. You called in. Well, that episode got praised, actually. One of the authors that we interviewed actually really liked your call-in, so...
Lovely.
Yeah. I may have withheld that praise from you. I don't remember if I remember to tell you or not. You might have. You were just patting yourself on the back for having me on. Yeah, I took the credit. Exactly. But that's us, guys. Booksboys.com is the portal to all the things that we do. And, of course, check out Playboys and everything else. You can buy a T-shirt on there and check out some of our music on Spotify. There's links to various things. Tell your friends and blah, blah, blah. We're going to finish with a song. And usually I'll play a mix. So I do a song by me, a song by PJ, and a song that we both did together. I guess going forward, it'll be mostly just stuff that I've done. However... there was one song recording that I have with you in it. We did some sea shanties, and I thought that with your permission, or without, we'll end this episode with some sea shanties. Sure. If the DJ would spin that record, we'll be back in about a month. Boy.
Oh, we'd be all right if the wind was in our sails. We'd be all right if the wind was in our sails. We'd be all right if the wind was in our sails. And we'll all hang on behind. And we'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. And we'll all hang on behind. Oh, we'd be all right if we make it around the horn. We'd be all right if we make it around the horn. We'd be all right if we make it around the horn. And we'll all hang on behind. And we'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. And we'll all hang on behind. Well, a night on the town wouldn't do us any harm. When a night on the town wouldn't do us any harm. A night on the town wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all hang on festival wouldn't do us any harm. Another festival wouldn't do us any harm. Another festival wouldn't do us any harm. We'll all hang on behind. We'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. And we'll all hang on behind. And we'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. And we'll all hang on behind. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go.
Books Boys was presented by TheDean and Playboy Alex in association with Thaddeus Penguin Productions. This episode was brought to you by our sponsor,
The Corporation for Holidays Instead of Books.
If you would like to get in touch, you can email us at booksboys@hotmail.com or visit us at booksboys.com. The intro uses Driving in the 70s from the Of Soundtracks and Garage Bands EP by Trapdoor. And the outro uses Dog's Light by Bravo Max from the album of the same name. All music used is either podsafe or used with permission. If you'd like to support the show, go to patreon.com/booksboys, get the show early and all of our bonus Spoof Fan the Boys shows, and you can also check out our music on Spotify or Apple Music. Thank you kindly for listening to us. Please tell your friends, and come back next time for another episode of Books Boys. Read some books! He's Alex.
Oh, that's what that intro means.
Yes, you gotta read up the intro.
Okay.